All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Colson. I'm a Graph Advocate and a member of Graph Advocates DAO. I would like to welcome everyone to Graph Community Talk number 17. We have an amazing lineup of speakers today. We'll talk about Superfluid, the House of Web3, Geo, Republic of Ocean, the sunrise of decentralized data, and the GRT Data Hub chatbot. Today, to start off Community Talk, I would like to give you some updates from the Graph community or the Graph ecosystem. And I would like to pass the mic to Darby and Dylan, who will speak about Eat San Francisco.
Yeah, I can start off. So yeah, this last weekend, or 2 weeks ago now, I think. Sorry, losing track of dates. ETHSF happened. I had the opportunity to attend to help assist at the Graph booth, which was amazing. I believe there was just roughly 1,500 people attending that event, which makes it one of the largest ETH Global events, I believe, which was amazing. There's a lot of great sponsors there, a lot of great hackers. It was a great event to be at, and I always recommend people to try to attend an ETH Global event if they have the opportunity to. Aside from that, the House of Web3 was also recently launched, and we had the opportunity to check it out. The House of Web3 is launched by Edgenode and is located in the Presidio in San Francisco. It's launched as a co-creating space for Web3, and it's uh it's a really amazing space. If you have the opportunity to check it out, it's right next to the Walt Disney Museum. Um, I don't know. I think they're in the process of finalizing how Web3 creators can schedule time in the space, but once that's finalized, I believe its team should be able to have access to that in some way.
Yeah, amazing. We will have Noel later on to talk about the House of Web3 as well. So it's
Oh,
going to be good.
perfect. Perfect. Yeah, I don't have much else to say about ETHSF, but it was a great event, and I had lots of fun being there.
Very nice. It's good to hear. I would like to pass the mic to Paolo now. He went to Web Summit recently, and I think he can tell us something about it.
Yeah, hello everyone. Yes, Web Summit was really interesting because actually, I mean, it was not a Web3 event, so it was not like the usual Ethereum conference or so. A lot of people, like people that were coming at the booth, at the Graph booth for 4 days, like 50% they were not aware about the Graph, and even, I mean, like Web3, probably they have just a basic knowledge about blockchains, but even no knowledge about blockchain. So I think this conference was really useful because when you go in a conference where no one knows you, so you can really attract a lot of curiosity, and we really had a lot of involvement. We were 5 people, and we met. We didn't count how many people, but there were thousands of people because the conference was massive. There were like 70,000 attendees, and so it was a lot of curiosity. So we informed a lot about the graph, and I mean, a lot of people that were, let's say, the 50% that were familiar with the space but not knowing the graph were really, I mean, impressed by what the graph is solving. I mean, the problem that we are going to solve, because they actually, for people familiar, even people familiar with blockchain and Web3, not all the people are knowing exactly, I mean, what the graph is solving, the problem that we are addressing. So, I mean, it was really useful for this reason. And I think this is also kind of conference that are important for, I mean, for the graph. So because there were, of course, other protocols. There were also Filecoin, Polygon, Polkadot. But because it was mainly a web conference, so, I mean, that is probably the most important takeaway, that for sure this is a good investment to go in places where you are really not known, and you can really make people more aware of Web3, on this revolution, on the because people were still, I mean, so what we saw, that people were still, I mean, misunderstanding, I mean, and they do not know about Web3, like, technology revolution, but they are still familiar with crypto, with assets, with speculative assets, but not with the technology that we are building. So I mean, this is the major takeaway. So this conference are really, really useful.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that, Paolo. So next, a community update. It's that Tegan of EdgeNode made a post on the Graph forum concerning the recent events that happened with FTX, and the link to that forum post will be posted in the chat room. So if you want to check it out, feel free to do so. Next up, I would like to pass the mic to Nick to talk about the upcoming Graph anniversary on December 17th.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So first and foremost, thank you, Colson, and all the advocates here for putting this together. This is a strong call with a lot of great information. In association with the foundation, we're working on several birthday events to commemorate the Graph's second birthday. We've identified several cities and event hosts in each city, and we're currently working on budgets and making sure that we can have high quality events where we can celebrate and acknowledge the Graph's second birthday on December 17th, so just over a month away. We'll formally announce the cities once we've finished everything, but I am able today to give a little bit of alpha and say that there will be birthday events in Buenos Aires, in San Francisco, and in Singapore, with several more announcements to come. So very excited. If you live in one of those areas and want to participate or help support that local event, reach out to me on Discord. In the meantime, more announcements to come.
Thank you so much, Nick. We have a couple of more updates from the ecosystem. There are some new episodes of GRT IQ, some of them with people that are in this call right now. So we had one with Paolo from the Graftronauts, one with Christina from Advocates DAO, one with Eric Chen from Injective Labs, and one with Nico Vergouwen from Tenderize. And those links will also be posted in the chat right now. Then we also had the Core Dev call on November 10th, and that link will also be posted on the chat. We had some very nice contributions from Graph advocates. One of them is a newsletter weekly that is made by Kyle. And one thing that is very cool to see is that a couple of Graph advocates are now translating that. The last newsletter was translated to Spanish, Urdu, French, and German. So we're going to go worldwide with them. And we also have Code Along from Alex, which is also in the call right now. Really fun sessions to join if you want to learn React, Rust, or about substreams, or all the other cool stuff that Alex is doing. So definitely keep on the lookout for that one. Those were all the community updates. So we're going to get into the segments now. First off, I would like to invite OX Da Vinci from Superfluid, which is one of the engineers there. And he will talk a bit about Superfluid and the graph.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for the intro, Colson. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Cool. So today I'm just going to be talking briefly about subgraph testing using Matchstick. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but I just want to give you my brief experience with it and what we're doing at Superfluid initially and why we're switching over to using Matchstick. So just a quick overview of Superfluid. So what is Superfluid? We're a streaming protocol deployed on 6 EVM chains: Polygon, Gnosis Chain, Optimism, Arbitrum, Avalanche, and BNB Chain. What makes Superfluid unique as a streaming protocol is that there's no upfront capital lockup. So you can, let's say, stream as much as you want, and you don't need to lock up any capital. It's not a vesting app or vesting protocol, it's a streaming protocol. And also, in addition to that, it's composable and programmable, so you can build apps on top of Superfluid. All right, let me move on to the existing Superfluid subgraph integration test uses a locally deployed subgraph node, and we first deploy the Superfluid contracts, then we execute contract transactions, we wait for the subgraph to index these events, and then we modify a local state based on the input. So we retain a local state. Initially, everything is is 0, and we have a lot of duplication of the subgraph mapping logic here, which is not ideal. Then we execute the subgraph query, and we check if the local state, so there's a lot of code to keep track of the local state actually, is matching the data that's returned from the subgraph queries. So we basically execute transaction, wait for the subgraph to index, and run its mapping logic. We modify our local state in JavaScript based on the past inputs, basically rewriting the mapping, and we check if this thing coincides. So what's the issue with this? It's very complex, and the existing subgraph tests are very messy. It's hard to maintain and organize the structure of the test. Every time I come back to write tests in the current integration test, I just hate my past self, so it's a lot of pain. And so the solution, in my opinion, was Matchstick, and using Matchstick unit tests. So this is officially supported by the graph, which is great, so we can have confidence that this project will go on for a while. And I think the main pain point that this solves is that it offloads the state persistence to the store, which is the subgraph database or the state. And we no longer have to basically write a bunch of code that manually takes in some input and updates the local state and keeps track of all the local state. That's most of the code in our current existing tests. So currently our Matchstick test structure just looks like this. We have a test folder. For each of the different mapping files, we have something like CFA v1, which stands for Constant Flow Agreement v1. We have a helper.ts file, which creates the mock events and other helpful functions. And we have the actual test file, so the .test.ts. And we also have some miscellaneous helper files, such as type conversion. So this is converting from, let's say, a string to an Ethereum.value, or a string to an Ethereum.value, or Ethereum.event, which is a string. And we also have some mocked function helpers. So basically, when you are doing Matchstick integration tests, you need to mock functions if your actual mapping logic includes RPC calls. And the execution is pretty simple. You just run graph test or yarn Matchstick after you do a yarn install of Matchstick. You can find that in their docs. And so the general test format when using Matchstick is you have an input, which is an event mocked with past parameters. And this is created from the function in helpers.ts. It's good to organize it this way, I think. So future developers aren't just seeing like 10,000 lines of, or however many lines of code in one giant folder or file. And then you run the handler, passing in this created event, which executes the handler function and your mapping logic with this mocked event. And then finally, you assert that the subgraph entity was properly created by checking that the properties are properly set. A simple test is that you pass some event to the handler, so this can be any basic event, and then you just check if the event-based properties. So we have a event interface in our schema.graphql file, and we check that the params are equal to the inputted params, and that the other parameters are properly set. And you can easily write more complex scenarios without having to keep track of state manually. In fact, I've recently started to work more on the not just checking if our event entities are correct, but some more complex entities, as well as calls with, or mapping logic with multiple RPC calls. And while I guess one of the pain points that I'll bring up later is that you have to write a lot of mock function calls, it's still quite not that bad. So some benefits of using Matchstick: it's really fast. It's just way faster than our existing tests. We have 30 tests right now, and it runs in like 2 seconds. It's really awesome. It acts as pseudo documentation for Superfluid contracts, and in fact, I think any contracts in general. There's a lot of knowledge you can pass on to developers in the subgraph mapping logic, actually, because you have to deal with bytes and all these different types that are quite specific to the EVM. And I think it's really nice way to ease into the contracts. So, like, for example, when I started Superfluid, I didn't work on the contracts initially, but I looked at the subgraph and then the contracts, and I think having, if there was something like this, like Matchstick, when I arrived, it would have been a much smoother transition. And finally, I think it has really nice debugging developer experience. You can log in your mapping logic and mapping functions, and it actually shows up. And you can also log store to print out the entire state at any time you want. And also, it handles the state persistence for you. You don't have to manage that yourself. Also, I think the main pain point, like I mentioned earlier, is just the mocking contract calls. It's just a bit tedious. It's not that annoying, to be honest, but it can just get a bit tedious. And my solution so far has just been to create helper functions for these, for heavily used contract calls, and then aggregating some mock contract calls for specific events. So for example, we have an event called flow updated event, and I know exactly which mock contract calls are needed for that, and I'm going to be writing a lot of different tests for this event, so I can just put all of this in a function, pass in all the parameters for that specific test, and then it'll do all the mock contract calls, and it becomes much easier to maintain down the line. For example, if I have to add a new RPC call into the handle flow updated event mapping logic, I just have to go over here and add it in this aggregated mock function, contract calls function. And so what happens to our existing subgraph integration tests? Well, these are going to remain, but greatly reduced in scope. And it's not going to look or handle state persistence or property validation anymore, as this is being handled by matchstick unit tests. So there's going to be a lot of code deletion, which I love doing, actually. And it's the existing integration test, we're going to keep it still, but it's mainly going to be used to test if contract calls made on the local blockchain, Hardhat, Anvil from Foundry, or Ganache, which is connected to a local subgraph node. You can use the graph node and use a Docker container to spin this up. We just want to check if this whole process end-to-end can still, we execute a transaction, see if this local subgraph picks it up and can create and fetch these entities. So I just finished. Just want to mention I'm a developer experience maximalist. I think that enjoyable coding leads to productive coding. Obviously, when I decided to use this matchstick tool, we considered the trade-offs with using third-party vendors versus using our own tools. Obviously, you don't want to offload core and key parts of your infrastructure to a third party because it can be dangerous, but I feel like this was a suitable and useful place to do it because there's comparative advantage and expertise which the team at LimeChain has, and they're spending their entire days building this out, and they're going to do a much better job. And you shouldn't be focused on stuff like that when you're working at a startup. You have limited resources and time to implement and maintain this. So yeah, and that's it. Thanks for having me on, Coulson. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that explanation. Thank you. For the next segment, I'm going to invite Noel from Edge and Node to talk about the House of Web3.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Let me just get... okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to share my screen. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Noelle. I help lead marketing, events, and now the House of Web3 here in San Francisco. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So this is the House of Web3. Like I just mentioned, it's in the historic Presidio here in San Francisco. This is that building, and we take up that entire second floor there. It used to be the Presidio Trust. They had it forever. It had never really been up for rent prior to this. And so we picked, a lot of people always ask us like what made us pick this location. We did search for almost a year and a half for the perfect space, and we really thought the Presidio was it. We saw a lot of juxtapositions between, this used to house, this was actually bunkers for soldiers that were like fighting for the values they believed in. And that's essentially what we feel like we're doing here in Web3. It's also just, I think, one of the best areas in San Francisco. In the back offices there, you look out to the Golden Gate Bridge. In the front, you see Alcatraz. and we're right on the Presidio Square. So it just really makes this incredible space where you can come and co-create. And then if you need a break, you can take a walk. There's extensive tunnel tops now that will take you from the Presidio right to the beach and Golden Gate Bridge. So it's just this incredible, warm, and amazing space that I think really does help elicit your creative minds to come together. So that's why we picked this location. A lot of people also ask us, well, why a physical location? All of us are mainly remote here at Edge and Node. We're a completely remote team, but we really felt like, everything starts with human connection. We saw this when we just had Graph Day back in June, that, we'd go into the lobby in between speakers and like everybody would be out there just chatting with each other. They were so happy to be at the party, we had heard, especially since COVID. And we felt like, having a space where people could come together in person and know that everybody there would be working together on the same thing, maybe different projects, but we were all Web3 pioneers and we would be contributing to that mission was really important to us. And that is really why we wanted to have a physical space. So people ask, is this a co-working space? It's not a co-working space. As I mentioned, Edge and Node is a completely remote company. And so we didn't want this to be a place that you just come and do work. We really call this a co-creation space. So it's not an office. We want people here that are founders, are builders, or want to be in a project to come together, meet other people. Maybe you're going to, grab a new engineer for your project, or you're going to present to investors for a new project that you're pitching. But we really wanted this to be a space where people in Web3 with merit could come and know that everybody is right alongside you on the same, rocket ship, and we would be here to support you. So that's really what this space was made for. One of the main initiatives is to have incredible events. So we are hoping to have at least 2 events per week. We want to have workshops, interactive panels. This could be, somebody's launching a project or has a new project and wants to talk about it. Or maybe it's even getting people that are in Web 2 to learn about Web 3. So we're hoping to have a learning series where you know nothing about the Web 3 space, and this is the toolbox that you need to get started. We're really excited to start with this. This was a really important part of wanting a physical location. And we also are interested in enacting social change there. So, I think during COVID, we all saw in our areas, how much it impacted us. Here in San Francisco, we have a lot of issues with the unhoused. We have a drug problem on some of the streets, and we've just seen with the bureaucratic red tape how hard it is to enact change. And so we're really hoping to use almost this location in San Francisco to show the world what's possible with the tools of Web3. And we're really hoping to try to utilize that in our community to enact change here in San Francisco and use it as almost a case study. So we had our grand opening on October 27th. Hundreds of people from the Web3 community came out to celebrate. It was so great. A big thank you we had 3 amazing advocates who came to support the launch and were so helpful. We got some great press from Axios, who wrote a great article and also put us in their newsletter, SF Standard, Biz Journal, and it was on the Newswire, and Yahoo picked it up. We had an official ribbon cutting ceremony and champagne toast, and then Tegan, myself, and Yaniv gave some welcome and thank you speeches. And then here are some pictures from that evening. We do have a Polaroid wall that you're welcome to take a picture, and then we put you up there. I'm going to show it a little bit later in the slides. And here are some pictures I thought I would just run through really quickly. So when you first come into the space, this is the initial room that you'll see. It's our welcome desk and also our cafe area. And here's kind of where you can grab some snacks. This is the boardroom. So once again, you have a presentation, a group of people you want to project to. This would be the room to do it in. This is a lounge. This is our north lounge area. So the space actually has like 2 wings that are pretty mirrored. And some of the rooms, we have a north lounge and a south lounge, and they look very similar to each other. This is our North Main, we call it. So this is where all those workshops and speakers are going to come and talk. It can fit about 150 people in here comfortably. And the microphones are always ready to go. So, I can foresee a lot of impromptu presentations going on in this room, but this would be our main speaker room. And then this would be the main co-creation room. It can hold about 60 people comfortably in these great comfortable chairs to really do some great work, and looks out to the Presidio Square right there. Here's another lounge. This is our South Lounge. These are smaller rooms, about 16 chairs that you can fit in here comfortably. So for smaller groups, we had during ETHSF, someone come and they had like a mini offsite here in that room. We have a ping pong table, of course, we like to have fun. And then this is the wall that we've been building out with our Polaroids. As you can see, the place has incredible art. We were really lucky. A local art collector, Paul Rasconi, has loaned us his art collection, which is amazing, and also some of his art, which starts digitally first, which is really unique. And then we have two rooms that have sit-stand desk for those times that you just really want to be grinding out. And so what's been happening during the first 2 weeks, and how can you come co-create in person? So far, we held our grand opening. We've also held a full stack workshop and a happy hour. During ETHSF Global, we held an event for their sponsors for hundreds of people. We've received hundreds of applications. This is an invite-only space, so you can go on our site to request an application. We've gotten hundreds of applications. We're ready to launch a Web3 supporter NFT, and we're looking forward to help host the Graph 2-year birthday celebration in December with the Graph Advocates. So how do you come create in person? It is an invite-only process to come to the House of Web3. So you would go to the Edge of Node website and click on the upper right House of Web3 tab. You request an invite, and if you have merit in Web3 and want to come to the space, you also can sign up for upcoming events. So most of our events are going to be open to the public, so anybody can sign up for those events. And for anyone on this call, if you're in the area, please ping me. You can find me on Twitter. I'm First Noel, and let me know. I'm happy to have you come by and give you a tour. And that is it.
Awesome. Thank you, Noel. If anybody has any questions, they can probably ask them in the chat, and then you could answer them, hopefully. So it's going to be good.
Yes.
Next up, I would like to invite Arturas to the stage to tell us a little bit more about Geo.
Hello. I'm Arturas, and I work as a product manager at Geo. So we did initially announce about Geo this year in June during the Graph Day, and we worked quite a bit on the project since then. And on October 25th, we have announced sort of like fully publicly about this project. And in the upcoming few weeks, we will have actual first version of it launched, and so people will be able to play around with it and see what's it about. So as a product manager, I can more talk about the concept behind this project and the idea, not as much on the engineering side. But in general, so I could provide a short introduction. So as you know, that probably that the term Web3 has two meanings. It was first in 1999. The semantic web was a big thing that people were talking about. In 2006, the Web3 was first used to describe the upcoming iteration of the semantic web. The transition from Web2 to Web3 was thought to be a transition between just the web as we understand it to right now, where all of the data is just put in different websites with no constraints of how exactly the data is structured in place. The transition to that data being structured in a way that it would be machine readable. And only later on, the Web3 as a blockchain-based internet came about. So there are basically these two different Web3 terms floating around, which mean the different things. And the interesting thing about Geo that we are actually building this sort of internet on the blockchain. So we are Web3 in this modern terminology. We are Web3, but at the same time, we're also making it in a machine readable way. So we're building it a semantic web. So basically, we're building it in Web3 squared. That we can like a small joke about how we look at it. So the thing is that all of the data that we will be placing on the decentralized knowledge graph of Geo is going to be with triplets, which is just a really simple way to add data. So it would be like very simplistic. We just basically have an entity, an attribute, and a value for every fact or claim that we want to make, and that is machine readable. And we can have unlimited claims about any fact or entity. So to give you an example, for example, whatever hobbies do you personally have, like each one of you, like it might be history, for example, or astronomy or whatever. And let's say you are interested in history, particularly and maybe like in World War I, or maybe specifically you're interested in ancient Rome or Greece or whatever. So the question is, if you have a hobby and if you want to have the information about it, if you're looking for it, where exactly do you get this information from? So you read books about those topics. Maybe you find like good, cool articles about them as well on the internet. Maybe you can find some podcasts or YouTube videos about them, and you sort of grow your knowledge of that thing this way. When it comes to Geo, you can take because it is a decentralized knowledge graph based on like facts, and each fact is an entity. So let's say you get a book that you like, and in every book, there obviously it's made up of different components, right? So it has chapters, it has somewhere mentioned maybe examples of something, maybe it has sources listed, maybe it has certain claims. In each book, you can find all of these things. So adding all of the claims and all of the facts mentioned in any book or an article into GeoSystem, and then that means every single fact is now an entity onto itself. So now you can add unlimited amount of attributes and values to those facts. So for example, if you find a book about ancient Greece or Rome as a historical book, and there's one specific fact, like which says that, for example, in ancient Rome, there was a certain living standard there. And you can tag that statement with many attributes, such as ancient Rome, living standards, historical facts. So you can add these attributes. Sorry. And now this fact is just a part of the general knowledge graph. And maybe you find similar fact in some other article or some other book, which says the exact same thing. So now you add that fact as well, assign it a new entity ID as well, and you can add the same attributes that is also a historical fact about Rome. So when you will be searching on Geo, for example, for historical facts about Rome, now you will get both of these facts, even though they're from different sources. So this way, basically, we can merge knowledge on any topic from all of the sources that are available in the world to us into one systemic structured place. And we can navigate them by using universal search terms. So if you're looking for information, for example, what is what is the timeline of ancient Greece, or what is the best product to buy under these circumstances, or what how should I vote on the upcoming bill, or something like this. You can immediately get all of the arguments for and against these things from all of the sources neatly listed for you to read. So this basically changes it changes how exactly we experience the internet. Because right now, if you want to find some information, you have to basically open up 20 tabs, read through many different articles and websites. You don't know exactly if you find something that's not in correlation, some things that are mutually exclusive. There are different statements about the same thing. You don't know who exactly to trust and how to address those contradictory terms. On Geo, you don't have to do that, because once you're searching for something, you just get immediately all of the statements from everywhere. But also, if there are contradictory statements there, you can set up a debate mode immediately, and you can assign that this entity has a relationship with another entity, So if both entities are facts, which are saying different things about the same thing, you can assign the relationship as being a conflict, and now you can address it on Geo as well in the same structured way. So we are trying to make it that everything would be an entity, and every entity could have unlimited amount of relationships. So basically, we would be recreating a human brain into a computer, but not a human brain of one person, but instead like a human brain of the whole society into one place. And we can use it to understand topics in a much more structured and complex way. The same as we can use it to resolve conflicts and misunderstandings that the society is facing, like different approaches to the same issues that we want to solve and so forth. And we can use it to communicate in general and cooperate in solving these problems. So one of the way that we're doing it is we're gonna have spaces in Geo. And each space is just a community which is actually working on the same topic. So for example, you can have space just for historian buffs, and everyone can just add all of the data about history in one space. Maybe someone else has a health space where people who are just into biohacking and want to optimize their health, they can add all of the data from all of the best sources they know about these topics. And each space can have its own democratical system, like how exactly do we vote in any fact, who decides which facts are going onto the knowledge graph, and how do we value these facts? So what's the ranking system? And each space can decide on their own. So this is sort of a democratical experiment as well, because each community can adapt the best form of governance, which is the best for that specific community of experts or enthusiasts. So that's like a gist of what we're trying to build on a conceptual general way. In the upcoming few weeks, we should be launching the beta version. It's going to be still have only the readability function for now. So you will be able to search through the data on different topics. And later on, as we launch the first version, we will be adding these different features, which is the relationships between those facts and entities. And you can find out more right now on Twitter for Geo and geobrowser.io on our website. So that's a short introduction. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Arturis. And yes, I think people will have a lot of questions, but we can ask them in the chat or reach out to you on Twitter probably. It's going to be good. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Saswat, which who's going to talk about the Republic of Ocean, which is one of our recent grantees. So I would like to invite Saswat to the stage.
Hey, thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. My name is Sashwat. I'm the host of the Web3 Ocean podcast, and I'm super grateful to the Graph Advocate DAO to actually, support me through the entire process. I'm a newbie in this ecosystem as well. I come from a SaaS Asura kind of background, but I will be representing Graph as well as meeting the Agent Note team out here in East India, Bangalore, on the 2nd of 4th, and I'll be supporting a few of the DevRels over there, Wish from the Graph Foundation team. In terms of the podcast, I have started having conversations with few of the leaders. I've started just recording it, but the good low-hanging fruit was launching my NFT series, which is like the bedrock for the community engagement as well. The way I'm structuring my podcast is like I'll be having 7 or 10 NFTs minted out for those episodes primarily and distributing within the community per se. So yeah, the first one was minted on the 11th of November this year. And at the moment, I'm trying to engage with few of the community members from the Graph Advocate DAO as well. And you will be seeing a lot of good podcast episodes from my side. And I will be presenting in a very deeper manner in the next presentations as well. Looking forward to take notes, feedback, and engage with everyone over here. And super excited to be in this community and contributing to it as well. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you. And we're going to look forward to the podcast. So once they come out, we'll definitely share them on the community talk as well. All right. Up next, we have Derek from Data Nexus to talk about the sunrise.
Huh?
Oh, sorry. Saswat, could you mute your mic? Okay. Think it stopped. But next up, we have Derek from Data Nexus to talk about the sunrise of the decentralized service. Derek, go ahead.
Hey, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, good. So talking on the sunrise of the decentralized mainnet, we've had multiple conversations. I think we've discussed it in prior community talks as well on the trajectory of I guess sunsetting the hosted service and sunrising the mainnet. But this is the overall transition process from the we'll call it the free service of the hosted network, which was kind of our test to make sure that the technology base is resilient, that it's performant, and it's solving the needs of developers. And so moving all of these subgraphs over to the mainnet is it's a primary action for the graph, because then they can start to experience the decentralized data provided by a multitude of indexers. That the overall timeline has been adjusted a little bit, and it's rather than time-based, it's more performance-based. And Brandon had a very good, very long Twitter thread just addressing some of the different points. But one of them to highlight is improving the developer experience. And I wanted to just kind of share, actually, I'm going to share my screen. I wanted to kind of share a little bit of what that means and what that looks like as a developer. So if we go to, sorry, let me know when you guys can see my screen. Colson, can you see it?
I see it.
Yeah. Sorry.
Wonderful. Okay, good. So if we go to the Subgraph Studio, this is where developers will they'll deploy their subgraphs to this studio, and then this is how they're going to interact with the billing or paying for their queries, to the various indexers. So here you'll deploy a subgraph. You can see some of the ones that I've deployed. You can see all my tests and all of that. In the next tab, you have access to your API keys. And so this kind of shows the specific API keys that you're using to query a subgraph. And for those of you that are not tech savvy, let's discuss what an API key is. So let's say that you wanted to query the Premia subgraph. You have this little endpoint right here called your query URL, and you just copy this bad boy, and then I'll open up a notepad so you can see what that looks like. I got to make it a little bit bigger. So you can see this is the actual address that you're going to send the query to. It goes to the gateway. The gateway then is going to feed it to one of the indexers on the subgraph. And there's this little space that you can add your specific API key. So you could go back here. I'll just grab a test API key. And then you paste it in here. I'll go and I'll change this, so no worries. And so you'll paste it in there, and now you can start to make queries. And that's how we connect a user or a specific wallet to a query that is being requested. So I'll go back, and then I'll regenerate that later. So now a developer has their API key. They've got their subgraph deployed on the mainnet. The next step is to go into the billing process, which this has been a point that people have given some good feedback on in terms of simplifying this process. Right now, if you want to pay for queries, you need Ether on the mainnet to cover gas costs. You need GRT, and then inside the studio, you can go. There's a bridge that you can do to move your GRT over to the Polygon chain, because all of the billing transactions, those all occur on Polygon, not on Ethereum. It would be cost prohibitive to try to pull a small amount of tokens on the Ethereum mainnet just gas cost wise. And just to give you guys a view of what that looks like, DappLooker has this great tool where it can see all the different tokens added and tokens pulled for the Graphs billing contract. And this is an example of a transaction that was pulling tokens from a user. And you can see it costs a total of 10 cents to do it. And it pulls, sorry, was that the correct transaction? Yeah, and it pulls many balances from many users. Trying to do this on the Ethereum mainnet would not be quite as efficient. So the challenges that brings is users now have to bridge GRT from Ethereum over to Polygon. They may or may not be familiar with that workflow process. Luckily, we do have a system in the studio to kind of help them through, where step one, you obtain your GRT and your Ether. then you move it over to Polygon, and then once it's on Polygon, you can then add it to your billing balance. And if I need to switch my wallet to Polygon, and then you can add it to your billing balance where I've got 100 GRT on Polygon. I can add it to my billing balance. If I just wanted to add 50, click add GRT, and then it confirms the transaction. So there's a lot of different steps in the developer experience in terms of, okay, after you've done all the work of creating a subgraph, or if you want to just query a subgraph that's already been created, the different steps that it takes to be able to actually run a query has quite a few steps in it. And so the teams are working on, and I'd say the teams, it's not me, it's the core developer teams are working on ways to simplify this process and make it a more streamlined user experience. And that's just for the initial creation of your first query. After that, then you have the systems in place to help monitor what is your billing balance, compared to the different queries that you're running. For a lot of people who are familiar with SaaS type products, it's pretty normal that people have a monthly recurring fee for certain products. Even as non-developers, I'm sure people in here are familiar with things like Dropbox or some of these other services where you just pay X amount of dollars per month, and then you have your Dropbox subscription. And so in the last core developer call, as well as Tegan's community update call, they discussed that they were going to be looking into ways to connect, just like a credit card, to cover your billing invoices, which would be like these guys. So you can see, a couple weeks ago, I paid 43 GRT for my queries. And so when this invoice gets generated, there's a card that would be added on file. And all of this is kind of hypothetical because we're still kind of working out exactly how it will run. But the concept is that when this invoice comes out, we could charge a credit card. It would then use those funds to go purchase GRT and pay for this invoice. And that way it all just works within existing systems. So that will be a pretty key highlight in the overall transition over to the decentralized network. But all in all, we want to improve the developer experience, and we want to make sure that that transition from the hosted service to the decentralized mainnet is as seamless as possible, and we don't we convert as many people as possible that don't try to go look for other solutions that to solve whatever problems we're running into. So that's just kind of a brief look, and I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of an insight for those of us that haven't necessarily interfaced with the API keys or billing on the graph, just to see, okay, well, what does that look like? Why would that be challenging? What solutions are coming, and how does that solve those challenges? Just to give you a little bit more of a real world example. All in all, the graph is moving full steam ahead on starting to incorporate new networks, which is very exciting. There's the whole MIPS program, where we are now indexing Gnosis subgraphs on the testnet. We are a participant in the MIPS program, as are other indexers on this call. So we're working on making sure that that one's just battle tested and resilient and highly performant, and then we'll be moving that one on to the decentralized mainnet, and then releasing the next chain that we're going to battle test. So the whole trajectory of the graph is improving the developer experience, bringing on more chains, which obviously helps Web3 as a whole, because then we can have more things supported by the decentralized service that we offer. So that's a little bit of insight. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And yeah, there you go.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Darren. It was really insightful. Very good. Thank you. Cool. If anybody has any questions for any of the community members here, you can ask them and we'll try to answer them. While questions are being drafted up, I would like to tell everybody that Indexer office hours is not happening today. So just to inform everybody that we'll be waiting for IOH. It's not happening today. So that was my announcement. Are there any questions from everyone? All right. I don't see any questions in the chat. So we're going to end it a bit early today, give everybody back 7 minutes of their time. I wish everybody a happy day, and I hope to see you guys in next edition of the Craft Community Talk. Goodbye, everyone.